Thank you. Well, thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be back in the U.S. It's always good to hear one of your bosses say something nice about you. In fact, these days, it's nice to hear anybody say something nice about you. But Joe's been a member of our board now for about 2 years, and he has really thrown himself into the car business, especially the way we do it at Chrysler. Maybe you've noticed he's even doing his own TV commercials now. But he's doing a hell of a lot better than I am. His sales were up in December over last year, and mine weren't. But, Joe, I got to tell you, I think that battery you mentioned is just about dry, and I think I speak for Red and Bob Stemple. We are pretty dry. We have had a tough 4 days. A day to fly over, a day to fly back, and in between a brutal schedule of meetings and dinners designed to kill you just in case the jet lag didn't do the job. The Japanese are terrific hosts, but they can wear you out. And you can even forget what you went for. That didn't happen this time, though. This was an historic trip. And let me start by saying that President Bush set a very, very important precedent for this country. He took some heat here, more here, that, by the way, as so typical, more here from the press than he did in Japan for dragging along, so they said, dragging along a business delegation. Well, the Japanese didn't know what the hell to make of it, except they knew something radically had changed. What's changed is that economics finally made it to the front of the plane, along with the generals and the admirals and all the foggy bottom types from the State Department. In the past, we weren't even invited to ride coach. So the president just tore a page from Japan's book. Their leaders have always taken business people on missions like this because they've always put economics and business first. Now we're doing that. The Cold War is over. The Soviet threat is gone. Now we can start taking care of business like Japan has been doing for the past 45 years. And I think that this trip served notice on that. Seeing American government and business arm in arm for the first time ever sent the Japanese a clear message. And I think the Japanese got it. They got it. They didn't like it. They fought it. Oh, boy, did they fight it. And they made a start in dealing with it, but only a start. Frankly, from a Detroit perspective, it was a weak start, but it was a start. The Big Three told the president that there should be a 20% reduction in the bilateral deficit in 1992, going down another 20% a year for the following 5 years until things are balanced. For 1992, it would have meant $8 billion off the total deficit. And that, by their own numbers, translates to about 180,000 Americans going back to work. That's pretty much what I told the Japanese in a speech there back in 1985. I said their trade surplus with the U.S. then was going to backfire. Shows what I knew, right? It was then $37 billion. And now, 7 years later, it's $41 billion. So you know how well they took my advice, right? But this time, the president was there too. And I think they listened better. Back in 85, I said they could take that deficit down any way they wanted. Could sell us less or buy more. Their call. We weren't specific this time either. But with autos and parts, 75% of the total problem, you'd have to assume that they'd be the major part of the solution. Hell, I didn't go to Japan to help open the rice market. The last time I looked, we don't grow any rice here in Detroit. Correcting the deficit has to be done mainly in auto trade, and like it or not, there is no other way. And the Japanese know that as well as we do. And they're going to fight it every inch of the way, believe me. They have this industry targeted, and they're not about to take us out of their gun sights. The auto parts commitment that they gave us looks good on paper, but we can't sort out how much of the increase they promised will come from their Keiretsu suppliers here. And on autos, we got promises to make their dealers available to American imports. Again, a start, a small one. But they would not touch, believe me, with a 20-foot pole, the bigger issue, and that was the flood of vehicles they're sending into this market. And if they're serious about closing the auto deficit, that's where they have to start. Now, I don't want to get into specifics. In fact, it's too soon. I literally saw the automotive parts plant late Thursday afternoon in Tokyo. Was that last night? When the hell was that Thursday? Jesus. And I've been on an airplane most of the time since. So we all need some time to sort things out. But I'll agree with the quotes I saw from Red Bowling and Bob Stempel this morning. Too little, they said. Way too little. This trip didn't resolve this country's trade problems to Japan. Hell, nobody expected it to. You cannot resolve in 3 or 4 days problems that have developed over about 20 years. But it did help bring these problems to a head, and frankly, that's been long overdue. The president applied pressure, and I mean he talked to us, lots of pressure. Now Congress will have its crack. Dick Gephardt and John Dingell and the Levin brothers, who are here, and Lloyd Benson and others have a bill in to force the 20% deficit reduction that the big three were suggesting. So I would suggest you stay tuned around here. It's important that we use all the leverage we have, because without persistent outside pressure, the Japanese will not move at all. And why in the hell should they? They're winning. In fact, they're beating our brains in. So we're going to have to move them. And we have to, because we cannot as a country handle the sheer size of the imbalance. $41 billion in 1 year with one country, and over $400 billion in a decade. Think of that. And the pattern's still the same. We ship them food and chemicals and raw materials, just like a colony. And they ship us value-added cars and machine tools and electronics and all that high-tech stuff where all the good high-paying jobs are, just like the mother country. We cannot handle the unemployment that deficit causes, or the closed plants, or the lost tax base, or the insidious Japanese economic and political power within the United States that comes with it. In this city, of course, we've got a special problem. The big three, and I hesitate to use big here because we sold less than 15,000 vehicles in Japan last year. Hell, the Japanese transplants in this country sold more cars in Japan than that. By contrast to that 15,000, the American public often forgets this, Japan sold about 3.8 million cars and trucks here. Pretty big difference, huh? Are we all that stupid? They say over there it's because our stuff is junk. I don't think so. I wonder if there's another reason or a couple reasons. Like maybe because my Jeep Cherokee costs $12,000 more in Japan than it does here, because they will not accept our certification procedures. Everything has to be inspected, and there's a maze of red tape and distribution costs that are not designed to protect the Japanese consumer. They're designed to keep us out, and it works. If they don't like our cars, you'd think they could take some American parts and help shave the auto trade deficit that way. Well, they haven't done that either. America sells less than $2 billion worth of parts a year to Japan, but we sell $22 billion worth to the rest of the world. Pretty funny, isn't it, unless you're in the parts business? Those parts are good enough for Mercedes and BMW, but not good enough for Isuzu and Daihatsu. We are getting stiffed. And when Detroit gets stiffed on autos, America gets stiffed on trade, period. That's because cars are America's rice. Any argument for protecting Japan's rice farmers is an argument for completely shutting Japan out of our auto market. Now, I don't want to do that, and I don't know anyone, any sensible man or woman in the country who wants to do that. I'm called a protectionist. I'm really a free trader. The thing I want to protect is free trade. And the way you do that is you retaliate against those who don't believe in it. Does anyone here? And if there's anyone here who thinks for a damn second that Japan practices free trade, I got some S&Ls I'd like to sell you guys before you leave. Japan has no use for free trade. It certainly has never practiced fair trade. No, what Japan practices is predatory trade. Let me give you an example of how it works, if you don't know by now. We recently got some research from a major American financial institution. It's so major you'd know the name, but they asked us not to use it, please, because they do business in Japan and they got some of the numbers from their clients there.